Welcome to Ecolust Live. We are Hayley Tillard and Chris Minehan from Ecolust Life, and we are live in our Facebook group, Sustainable and Intentional Lifestyle. And today we are talking about reducing your food waste. Why are we talking about that?
I think it's important. I think we all eat food, so we don't want to waste it because it has so many detrimental impacts for not only the environment, for ourselves and our budget, all those sorts of things. So
exactly. If you reduce your food waste, it is good for you because you're saving money. It's good for the environment because wasted food ends up in landfill, which breaks down anaerobically, releasing greenhouse gases, which cause global warming. And it's good for society because if we are not wasting food, then other people who are more in need of food will be less likely to go hungry.
Exactly. So we'll cover off a few points today. We'll just wait for a few more people to jump in. G'day to everyone who's already in here. Alita, Lorna and Dan, hello, welcome.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, if you can hear us, please let us know. Make sure everything's running well.
Yes, please let us know.
And yeah, we'll just jump into what today's topic looks like. So yeah, we've got a fair few points to cover today, so we'll try and get through it as not as quickly as possible, but we'll try and keep it under an hour for you guys. So yeah, first info about what food waste is, food production, so all the things that go along with how we get our food, what it takes to get, the difference between vegetables and meats and, all those sorts of things. Learn the value of food, so it's very important, when we're valuing the food and understanding where it's coming from, we can then,
be less likely to waste it.
Exactly. A few other points, plan your meals.
So these are more like practical tips for how you can reduce your food waste.
What's the best way to shop? So this will be on an individual basis. Everyone's different. Everyone has access to different things. So of course, do what you can, do the best things for you, everything like that.
We'll get into that after we've done the summary.
Okay.
We're just doing the summary now. We're trying to be quick today.
Okay, eating leftovers, shop your fridge, is meal prep for you, composting, use your scraps, share, conclusion, and then we'll get into some Q&As. Hello, Leanne, welcome. Glad you could join us today. And yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Cool. All right. So first topic we're talking about today in regards to reducing your food waste is a little bit of information about food waste. Did you know that we have more than enough food in the world for everyone, and yet people are still starving? In fact, about 1 billion people are undernourished in the world, which is fucking ridiculous. So there are solutions to the world's social problems.
Yeah, so this is not only food waste like we're talking about today, but, we've spoken a little bit about homelessness and things like that. There's so many solutions for this stuff, and I think we'll get into this in a different topic later on. But, we just need to be aware of what's happening and what we can do to help with the social problems that we have in the world. But, of course, we need systemic change as well.
Yes, and I think the wonderful thing about food waste as an issue is that it can be helped on an individual basis. Of course, we do need to demand change from our corporations who are producing the food as well, but we can make really beneficial changes at an individual level. So food waste is one of the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitters. So if it was a country, there would be China, biggest greenhouse gas emitter, USA, huge emitter of greenhouse gases, no matter what Donald Trump says. And then the third country would be food waste. So one problem of this is that if we're buying more food than we actually need, it's creating a false demand for food, which actually makes it more expensive for everyone who needs to buy food. It's just that supply and demand principle. And actually 1/3 of all food in the world is wasted, which is not just bad for the environment and bad for society and bad for people who, want to eat, but it is also costing the global economy $940 billion, which would be better served in schools and hospitals and social development, whatnot. And then another bad aspect of food waste is that it's going to landfill. So like we mentioned in the introduction, when your food goes to landfill, it gets compacted into a cube. That's how they manage waste. And so the food in that cube doesn't have access to oxygen. So it breaks down anaerobically, so without oxygen. And the byproduct of that chemical process of breaking down or rotting is methane, which is 25 times worse for the environment than carbon dioxide.
Yeah, so of course, like when you're putting your food scraps and that into a compost, that's removing it from the landfill, but you are still getting those greenhouse gases. But like Haley said, it's just not as much.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it's so important for composting and things like that, and just keeping that food waste out of your bin and out of landfill.
Okay, so moving on to our next topic of food production. And just before I launch into this, I want to remind anyone joining us in the live right now, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. If they are relevant to the particular point we're on at the time, we'll answer it then and there. Or if it's on another matter, then we'll answer it in the Q&A at the end. But we really love your input and your questions. So, food production. Now, I want to thank Andrea and Sari, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, from our Facebook group, who put a link to this article in our group the other day, and I found it really interesting. So the article is called, "You Want to Reduce the Carbon Footprint of Your Food? Focus on what you eat, not whether your food is local." And this actually flies in direct contrast to a lot of the advice we get in trying to live sustainably, because it often says like eat seasonally, eat locally, and the reason for that would be because of the fossil fuels that go into transporting your waste from a different location. But really what the gist of this article based on data is saying is the transport resources that go into transporting your food are almost negligible compared to the type of food that you're eating and the greenhouse gases that they emit in their production. So the article is written by Hannah Ritchie and it's published on ourworldindata.org. And the data comes from the largest meta-analysis of global food systems in history. And it's published in Science magazine by Joseph Poore and Thomas Nemesek as of last year. And so they base their data on research of 38,000 commercial farms from 119 countries. So basically what they're saying is how many kilos of greenhouse gases are created from the production of different types of foods. And that's just the greenhouse gases created. It's not even taking into account like the water or the labor or the energy, etc., required for the food production. So my point in that is, yes, the greenhouse gases emitted from the production of food are a hefty impact on the environment, but there are still more resources and environmental impacts from this food. So do be mindful about the resources going into your food so that you're less likely to waste it.
Yeah, so finding out where your food's coming from is important, but also like what goes into producing that food, like the food supply chain. You've got land use, so deforestation, soil change. I know in Australia we have an issue with salts coming through because of deforestation and clearing the land for cattle, those sorts of things. Farming, of course, you got methane emissions, overuse of fertilizer, which can run off into rivers and lakes and pollute those and kill fish, and all sorts of different things that can happen as a result of farming. You also have monocultures as well, so this is not only affecting people who eat meat, but people who are eating vegetarian and vegan even.
Can you explain what monoculture is?
Yeah, so basically it's when a farm is just producing one type of crop. So I know almonds are just slandered these days, and probably for good reason, especially to do with the bees, of course, because they have so many bees that they transport to the almond farms in California. I'm guessing that's because it's one of the biggest almond farming places in the world, and because these bees are pretty much just worked to death, and there's so much cross-contamination of beehives and disease that goes from one hive to another, and then they're only getting one source of pollen, so they just have a really low immune system, all these types of things that can happen from monoculture farming. I know, it sounds grim, I know. But there are ways that farmers can help by splitting their rows of crops with wildflowers and things like that, just to help with bees, those sorts of things. I mean,
Chris is a giant bee nerd, and we probably need to do a whole like backyard bees episode.
I would love that. So everyone who wants that, let me know because I'll do it.
Okay, so other factors that go into the production of your food that have an impact on the environment include the feed for crop production, or crop production for feed for livestock, and then the processing of your food, which is turning those whole foods into processed foods, transport, and retail, like refrigeration, and the packaging. So it's like the packaging itself, and then the energy that goes into transport of that packaged food and the disposal of that packaging.
Yeah, so I just want to touch on feed again. So what that means is, we're producing crops like wheat and soy for then to be fed to animals who are also taking up land and things like that. So it's using the food that we could eat as humans to feed animals for us to eat.
And that's a big argument for veganism.
Yeah, and we're not saying we're vegetarian or vegan or pushing anything like that, but it's just good to understand this process so then you can make a more conscious decision for yourself and the environment.
Well said.
We've reduced our meat eating consumption. Thank you. Another English lesson from her. We should have like a segment. Yeah, so that's the reason why we've done it. Like, of course, you want to seek farming that does it in a good way, but again, this is all a process that comes with understanding the food production line.
Yes. So from this data, just to summarize it, the worst foods for producing greenhouse gases in terms of a kilo basis are red meat, dairy, chocolate, and coffee. And I assume that that's because the world just consumes so much of those foods.
Yep.
But also red meat, like we said, the land use and the farm and the feed create so many greenhouse gases in just producing that red meat for consumption.
Yep.
And then the popularity of red meat and dairy and chocolate and coffee would also contribute to those things.
Yep. Ben, my brother, welcome. Hello. He's just put in like a comment, just coming on the back of the almond comments I made. If you split the crops, you lose profit, so the cost of almonds would have to go up to compensate. And that is true. These farmers, they just focus on almonds so they can get the best bang for buck, I guess. And it's with any crop, any farming around the world at the moment. Every year we need more and more food to feed a growing population, and we have less and less farming land because of different reasons. So, desalination of the soil, nutrient loss in the soils, housing coming onto farming land, all sorts of issues. So as far as farming goes, we do need to find better ways to do it to be able to feed a growing population. So this is also a topic for a different time and a pretty big social issue.
Yeah, I think it's also the marketing that goes into certain foods. So almonds are so hot right now. They've gone through a big health food craze, especially in terms of like eat more protein and more fats, that type of information you get because almonds are high in that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe as a society we need to think about the impacts of like smashing certain types of foods rather than all focusing on like biodiversity of the nutrients we take in.
Yeah, I think that's important too.
And Dan has just said, I have 27 hives. What is that word?
Episode.
Oh.
It's just a typo.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, Dan, this is an English lesson for you, mate.
An episode on bees would be great. The more knowledge people have about bees and owning a hive would help our ecosystem greatly. I agree. I'd be interested to listen to this episode from you.
From me. I think I'd have to get an expert on because I'm a bee nerd, but I do not partake in beekeeping. I would love to in the future. Haley's dad is a beekeeper, and I love going over there and just watching the bees and love.
Yeah, he was throwing the ball for my dog yesterday, and that lasted about 2 minutes. And I looked out the window, and he was just staring at the bees flying around. It's like, what are you doing?
Well, it was about to rain, so I was just seeing what they were doing. I'm very interested. Anyway, I'm sure you do the same, Dan. I'm sure you're with me on that one, mate. So we'll get back into it. So the transport distance is not an important factor overall. So we're just summing up there. it's more important to look at the types of food you're eating rather than like trying to eat locally all the time.
And from this data, they said that the best foods to eat in terms of having the... Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
He just took my notes away. In terms of having the least contribution of greenhouse gases are plants as whole foods, including nuts, which is weird because we were just talking about monocultures with almonds. But the theory behind that is nut trees are replacing old crop fields, and the trees themselves store carbon. So that's why they're actually considered carbon negative crops.
And is a peanut a nut?
No, it's a legume.
Oh, she's clever. She's bloody clever.
Don't fuck with me.
All right, we'll move on to the next point, I think. Learn the value of food.
So I think this is just an important one in terms of reducing your food waste, because it adjusts your attitude. And I think if you're going to create any new habit in life, you need to have a why. And so if you know the value of your food, you're less likely to waste your food. So it's important to educate yourself on the resources that go into growing and harvesting and packaging and transporting and storing and marketing your food. And maybe one way to gain more of an appreciation is to actually grow your own food and see your energy and time and money and land use that goes into creating that food. You keep going. I don't want to monopolize this point.
Yeah, it's a monoculture of people talking.
Shut up.
Yeah. On the back of Haley's comments, growing your own food, of course, if you have the space, if you have the time, it's a lot of energy, of course. So, but this will definitely help you understand the value of food and what it takes to grow something. Like I know I've tried with herbs and all sorts of things, and there's, the possums eat them or something, or you stop watering them, or the different, there's so much that goes into it, and it's exhausting for me to even speak about it. And then, eating seasonally. Again, this is important because you go to the grocery store, everything's available all the time. So this is still an important habit to get into, is understanding what fruits are to do with which season, so they're not being stored for a long time or coming from a different country.
And we actually expanded more on this topic in a previous podcast episode where we interviewed the ladies from Idea Evolution, which is a podcast about raising sustainable families. And they spoke about how they educate their children in understanding that foods are seasonal and they don't just appear on the shelf in the supermarket. They come from somewhere, and naturally they are supposed to be grown at different times of the year. And if you're getting a mango, for example, in winter, more resources have gone into delivering that mango to you than otherwise would if you were only eating a mango in summer when it's naturally grown.
Do you just want to clarify negative crops again for... I think I'm getting... Is this Nora? I'm hoping that's right.
Yes, happy to.
Yeah.
So from the article that I read, on the graph, it shows how much carbon or other greenhouse gases are produced from the production of different types of food. So, for example, red meat, the graph is like this long because it's creating all of these greenhouse gases. But nuts have a negative carbon amount or greenhouse gas amount because the trees of the nuts themselves store carbon. So their existence means that less carbon and greenhouse gases are going into the atmosphere because they're stored in the trees.
Yeah, so let us know if that clears it up a little bit for you. If not, we can... I don't know what we can do, to be honest. Maybe we can share some articles about that.
Yeah,
later.
This article is in the Facebook group, so I could repost it. Yeah, tag you. That technology.
I know. All right, on to our next point.
So on to our practical tips for reducing your food waste. So a big thing that helps us is planning our meals. So this way you know what foods and ingredients you actually need for the food you're actually going to eat that week, or, whatever frequency you do your groceries. And it's important not to be sucked in by sales, because that means that you might actually buy more of a quantity of food than you actually need. Just know what you need go by that. Of course, if what you need is on sale, excellent. But don't be sucked into buying things you don't need, which is, a general sustainability life tip.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for this. I'll see something at a half price and then I will buy 2 of them because I'm like, I'm getting 2 of these for what I would usually pay for one, and we probably don't need it unless it's yogurt.
Oh, we need all the yogurt.
We need so much yogurt.
So the way that I plan my meals is using the website/app Trello. So I've spoken about this before. Trello is life. It's free and you can create different boards. So I use this to manage all of the different projects with Ecolust LIVE. I use it to create itineraries for travel. And another thing I do is meal planning. So I have the different days of the week and then I have like morning, breakfast, lunch and dinner. And then I have some snacks in there as well. And then I have another board where I have all of our like favorite meals. And then within those cards on the board, sorry if this is confusing you with the technicality, I can include the ingredients that are required for that specific meal. And you can drag and drop the different meals for different days of the week. So I like to, say if I cook, pasta and salad for Monday night dinner, I will then also have pasta and salad for Tuesday lunch. And that's just a time saver, but it's also a way to make sure we're eating all of the food that we make, because leftovers are the best thing in the world.
And a really good thing that I saw the other day, Grace posted her bingo board challenge thing the other day, and she has...
Grace is a member in the group.
Yeah, and she has this big piece of like...
it's like brown paper on a roll on her kitchen wall.
Yeah, so and she has all her meals for the week listed out there, and then she has some cool quotes, so that's read all the time. It's right near, it's right in the kitchen, so you see it right there. I think it's a really cool way to plan your meals. You understand what you're going to be eating, you understand what you need. And then I think the other thing that's important with planning your meals is, I think we will get into this in a later point, but looking at your fridge and being around what you have and what you can use and being creative that way as well.
So let's focus on what is your best way to shop so that you are working in a way that's best for yourself so that you can reduce food waste, because not everyone likes to shop in the same way. So I like to do groceries once a week. I don't want to go grocery shopping every day. I find that to be a huge waste of time and energy. But if you are shopping once a day and then you eat all of that food, then that might be a great way for you to reduce your food waste. Like a lot of people say in our group that doing smaller shops is something that really helps them reduce their food waste. I like to shop online, and so I take the meals and the ingredients from my Trello, and that tells me everything I need to buy for that week. And then sometimes I make Chris stand at the pantry and the fridge and tell me what we actually have, and he gets really cranky about it. But it is the most efficient way to do it, to make sure I'm not buying something that we already have in the pantry.
Yeah, it's so fun, like standing at the fridge and she's like, do we have this? And I'm like, yes. Do we have this? No. I don't like it.
It's teamwork.
Yeah.
So another reason I really like shopping online is not only does it mean I can just put in everything that I need into my like online shopping cart, but it means I'm only buying what I need rather than walking around the grocery store and being seduced by all of the packaging and the advertising.
And the hot cross buns.
Yes.
They put them right at the entrance. We have no hope. We have no hope not to buy them.
Also, can you let me know in the comments if you are a fan of hot cross buns being sold from like January to April, or if you think that they should be an Easter only event?
I think January to January.
I agree.
Oh yeah.
I'm not finished on that one.
Jesus.
Okay, also the best way to shop. I like shopping online because you can click a button and say, I'm going to use my own bags, which means they don't wrap things in their plastic bags. And say if you want to buy a particular, brand of crackers, and that brand is not available in the store that you're picking your groceries up from, you can say, no, don't provide me with an alternative. Because I think this is a barrier for a lot of people for shopping online, is they think, the store will give them a lackluster alternative to the item that they actually want. But you can say, no, I don't want your alternative.
Yeah.
I'd rather go without.
I had this issue with online shopping when I was buying my produce because, you don't want someone else picking your produce. So we don't do our produce online. It's just for, do you call them hard groceries? I don't know.
Hard groceries?
I don't know. What do you call them?
I guess packaged food.
Hard groceries. New term. I think hard groceries is a thing now.
All right. Okay, so another important step in reducing your food waste is to store your food properly so that it lasts longer. So this could include putting things in the freezer. It could include using airtight containers. So this is an investment that I want to make when we finally stop house sitting and get our own place, is to get glass containers so that we can meal prep and store our food so that it lasts longer and doesn't go off and get wasted. Another way to store your food properly is to label things. So you could say if it's in the freezer, it helps you know what you've got in there so things just don't fall into the depths of the unknown. And it can also help you know its best before date so that you can make sure you're eating things before they're way too old.
Yeah, and there's some good tips you can do to keep your produce fresher in the fridge too, because it can be quite a hostile environment for some foods, especially if you're not using a crisper. I know that, leafy greens might go a bit funny and you can put them in water, same with carrots.
You can bring dry carrots back to life as well. If you stick them in a glass of water and put them in the fridge for a week, they'll rejuvenate.
Yeah. Because the fridge is just so dry. It's like air conditioning, I guess. So it just dries everything out and makes things a bit funny. So there are definitely ways, and it's mainly just putting things in water so they last that little bit longer, or even just putting them in a container and putting some a moist
paper towel or something.
Not paper towel. We don't use that, mate.
Oh, sorry.
Cloth or a tea towel, something like that. Yeah.
Would you call that hard haberdashery?
Sure.
And also be organised and clean out your fridge often so that things aren't dying a slow death on the back shelf. And that way you can prioritise eating that food before it goes off.
Yep, I agree with that one.
Okay, so Dan agrees that hot cross buns ought to be year round.
Yeah, I think you're not alone with that one, mate.
And Leanne says, I love going to the supermarket as that is my kid free time, but I do one big weekly shop, then have to shop during the week. That sucks.
But yeah, kid free time. I'm sure you love getting that, and it doesn't happen often, so I'm sure you're resistant to the online shopping.
I used to like going to the grocery store while listening to a podcast.
Yeah, I think it is a good time to, get in the zone, just sort of walk around, have a look. But it does come with that risk of being taken over by advertising in hot cross buns. Yeah,
but if you're not susceptible to that, then you do you.
Yeah, and that may be a muscle you can train, saying no to things. Anyway, moving on. We digress.
Eat your leftovers. This is a big part about reducing your food waste. I love leftovers. It gives me so much joy in my soul to be out and about in the world and to know that I have dinner from last night left over in the fridge.
So can you tell that Hayley loves food? I don't know if you've picked that up yet, but any type of food. And I know people who don't like leftovers, so I don't know if it's that they don't like it or they're just adverse to it. I'm not sure, but yeah, let us know if you love leftovers, because I reckon the next day
food is better.
Food is better. It's had time to soak in its own juices, ferment almost.
You're not selling it.
Okay.
I don't think it tastes better necessarily, maybe if it's a curry, sure, whatever. But I just love that past Hayley has created present Hayley a meal.
I like that thinking.
Yeah. So like I said, when we create dinner overnight, we make double and have it for lunch the next day. Theoretically, We used to be in that really good habit, actually, and then we went traveling and we didn't have anywhere to store food, so we got into the habit of just eating everything that we cooked. So we're actually trying to move away from eating everything and saving some for the next day.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people agree. Courtney agrees. Lorna says it depends. Of course, it depends on the kind of food. Sometimes you look at it in the fridge and you think, I think that's going to make me sick. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's probably, I don't know, maybe you can give an example of a type of food that would be not good as a leftover.
I don't know if this makes me a disgusting person, but I am very lax with the age of food,
Yeah.
with food having fallen on the ground, with people having licked my food. I don't care. Maybe this helps me live sustainably, but I'm not fussy.
Maybe in the Q&A you can tell the story about the chicken leg and the homeless man.
What happens in Amsterdam stays in Amsterdam.
If you want to hear about it, please let us know in the comments and we'll make Hayley tell us. But yeah, actually there's a question from Nora again. Is there a special packaging that helps food stay longer?
I'm sure there is. I've seen lots of things on Facebook about like nifty hacks for storing your food. I would just Google it. I don't know that much off the top of my head. But like I said, airtight containers.
Yeah.
I like glass because storing your food in plastic is dubious. And yeah, sorry. I'll try and find something and I'll put it in the group about a cool little video about how you can store certain foods in certain ways to make them last longer.
Yeah, there's definitely some good tips out there, and we used to follow a lot of good accounts on Instagram who would have great tips like that, especially for the produce side. Yeah, I think the airtight containers to keep that dry air off the food definitely helps. I think actually answering Lorna's question, it's not a question, but the kind of food, I think garlic bread. Like any bread, when you put it in the fridge after, it's just like...
Yeah, some things aren't great the next day.
No.
I would still eat it. So if I have like veggie scraps, like half a capsicum or whatever, I like to make an omelette. There is nothing that cheese cannot improve. So I know this is not appropriate for the vegans out there, but eggs and cheese and like all of your veggie scraps, chuck them all together, make an amazing omelette. Also, old bananas are great for baking. Chuck everything in a soup. We're going to make pumpkin soup for lunch today, and I'm very excited.
Me too.
You can make stock and then put that in the freezer. That's an example of something you would label. And you can also make bone broth with old vegetables and bones and shit. I don't know how to make bone broth, but you do. Yeah,
but a lot of people will, cut the end off an onion and just throw that away, or the skin off an onion or anything like that. This is all good stuff that you can make a stock out of. So you can like, you wouldn't
eat the head of an onion, but you can throw that in a stock and you're getting the onion goodness, and then you don't actually eat that like hard bit of the onion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically you can just have a container, put in the freezer, fill it up, and once it's full, put it all in some water, make some stock, and then you can use that stock for your cooking, and you've taken all the nutrients. And then composting them or anything like that is good too. So definitely some creative ways. It takes a little bit of extra effort, but that's what sustainability is about, is doing the extra effort at the time to enhance the environment, enhance ourselves.
And once you've formed the habit, it's not an extra effort. It's just about... It's like you're going to experience some growing pains in that transition period from like your old, not so great for the environment lifestyle and your new enlightened environmental lifestyle. Yeah, it's going to be a bit tricky along the way, but you will create new habits, and then it will be like second nature to store the tops of your veggies in a jar and then make stock.
Yep. May I move on to the next point?
Yes, thank you so much for being considerate of me having finished the point before you take my notes away.
Oh, this is my life.
All right, what's this point, Christopher?
Shop your fridge.
Go on.
So this is on the back of leftovers, I guess. So prioritize eating older food first. So even if it is not leftovers or you've had it in the fridge for a little while, it's getting a little bit funny, find some use for it. Like cut some of the brown bits off a peach, or cut away some of the old spinach and use some, or freeze it for next time. It doesn't
even have to be like old and decrepit food. It's just knowing, okay, well, we went to the markets last Saturday. It's now Thursday. these things are getting a bit old. We're probably going to replace them in the shop this week. So I need to eat this stuff before they get too old.
Yeah. And this is like, it's almost like fridge education. It's like educate yourself on what's in your fridge, what's happening in there. So if you get your head around that, then you can, prioritize the next shop or prioritize the next food you're eating. Get creative with it, those sorts of things. This will really help reduce that food waste.
And sometimes you go through different phases of foods that you like. So technically I like mangoes, but I just haven't felt like eating them lately. And so I've had to tell myself, don't buy them because you're not going to eat them.
They're so delicious.
Yeah, I agree.
But you do get sick of them because they start coming out now in like October. So you're like, oh my God, mangoes are out. And then by, January, February, like, I'm sick of mangoes now.
Okay.
I think. Is that? No.
You tell me. Okay. If I was to have a superpower, it would be shopping my fridge and creating a gourmet meal out of nothing. Like, some people belong on The Bachelor or Married at First Sight. I belong on Ready Steady Cook, where someone presents you with random ingredients and you have to create a meal out of that.
That's true. I've seen this happen multiple times, and we did it really well in Canada with our friends. And I think this opened their eyes to the types of food they can make with their, not their leftovers, but their bits and bobs in the fridge. Because they were shocked at the types of meals Haley was creating.
Yeah, like, when you open your fridge and you're like, I have nothing to eat, I need to go buy some food. No, you can make a meal.
You've got a meal. If you got a door, you got a meal. And being disciplined before you buy more. So I think when I put that poll out during the week, someone said, they used to buy food all the time because their family was, wanting certain meals, but then she just got sick of that and just decided to, make them almost go hungry until that old stuff in the fridge was eaten and then go for a shop. And
that comes back to appreciating the value of food, right?
Yeah.
If you think that food just magically appears either from fridge fairies or from your mum, and you don't have to use up food because it's a valuable resource, then you are going to waste food. So I got lost.
Yeah.
Halfway
I don't know
through
what happened with that one.
But does that make sense?
That does. Yeah. It's about using that old food, being disciplined. Like if you really feel like pasta or something, and then you look in the fridge and you've got no pasta, but you've got some other meal that you can make it first and then go to the shops and get your pasta.
Yes. If you're still hungry.
If you haven't eaten everything already.
So a lot of people recommend meal prep as a way of reducing food waste, but I find that it can contribute to food waste because if you're someone who wants variety, like to eat different meals every day, then prepping, 5 spaghetti bologneses for your week isn't going to work for you because you're not going to want to eat it and then you might throw it out or waste that food. So work out if you are someone who needs variety, work out if meal prep does work for you or if you need to be making meals each day. And some people may be less inclined to eat older food. Like if a meal's been made 3 days ago and you have an aversion to that, then you're not going to eat it and are more likely to waste your food. But some people don't care. So work out what you want.
Yeah, I used to do this as a single man. I used to prepare my meals for the week and it would be like rice, chicken and broccoli. And by that 3rd or 4th day, that chicken was rubber. I felt like I was eating the back of pencils. Literally, it was a hard slog. So, yeah, I think diversity in your food is important. So you can make chicken for every meal, but then mix it up with the condiments or the side pieces.
Back in your side piece day.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the best ways to reduce your food waste is to compost. And like we were saying in the beginning, when your food scraps go to landfill, they break down anaerobically, which means without oxygen, creating methane, which is a terrible greenhouse gas. However, if you send your food scraps to compost, they still do create carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas, but it's not as bad as methane. And then also in the, as a byproduct of compost, it's creating a nutritious juice, which then goes to helping your garden grow. Now, we live in an apartment at the moment, so we don't have a garden in which to keep a compost bin.
I have a problem.
Enter
A compost bin.
So this is a 2-liter yogurt container that we have repurposed. Now we actually put a video in the Facebook group on Saturday about how we are, I think it was Tara in our group, lives in Brisbane, as do we, and said that you can go to local scout halls and they've got compost bins that you can take your compost to. So we did that on Saturday. It's fantastic. It's free. All you have to do is take your compost to the scout bin. But we learned on Monday that we fill this up very quickly, and this 2-liter container was not going to get us through to Saturday. So if you also, like us, eat a lot of plant-based foods, and you've got a lot of vegetable scraps, then either you're going to need a bigger container or you're going to need to empty it more regularly. Yep. So we took that full container to my parents yesterday because they have a compost bin. They actually have 2. So they've got what's called a hungry bin, which is a vermicomposter, which means it's worms that are eating that compost, and then their poo is creating that really nutritious juice for the garden.
Hard compost.
And then they've got a normal compost bin as well, without worms. So yeah, we just took our compost to them. And so I would recommend find someone who you can give your compost scraps to, because they might be grateful for it.
Yeah, I think people are, especially if they have a compost and they're struggling to fill it or anything like that.
I'm going to say only if they have a compost.
Yeah, don't give people your food scraps for no reason. But yeah, we were in a place before here where they had chickens, so that was great. But there's also things that chickens don't eat that we were eating, like skins of things, seeds, all those sorts of things. And then we would just bury it in the backyard garden. So I guess if you do have a garden, you can bury it, or even if there's you have a front, not porch, but like where your driveway is, if there's like a council garden that you maybe don't own, you can just maybe nighttime go out and bury it. Just be careful.
The gorilla composter.
Yeah, just be careful of people watching you do it and think you're burying, people. I don't know. Depends how big your compost is. Okay.
If you also live in a place where you don't have a back garden where you can have a big compost bin, then like a modern practical alternative is the Bokashi bin. So you can buy this, I think, from Bunnings. You can definitely buy it from Biome. They cost about $90, and I think they're maybe this big, so you can fit them on your kitchen bench. And so you can even put meat in there, and you sprinkle something on which stops it smelling and helps it break down. So you don't have to worry about the smell of decomposing food in your kitchen. Initially, they did sell that mix only in plastic bags, but I emailed them and asked if there was an alternative, and now they sell a big Hessian sack of that mix. So it's not like you are constantly buying plastic so that you can compost. So Bokashi bin, look it up.
Get on it. Next point?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. So using your scraps is our next point. So yeah, this is for those people, chickens, they'll eat anything pretty much, dogs, any livestock, neighbors' animals even. Just, get creative with this. I mean, don't
maybe ask your neighbors before you feed their dogs your scraps.
But yeah, this is also getting back to community as well. We're so ingrained now into
living in a silo.
Yes, being suspicious of people, or if someone knocks on your door. Back in the day, it was like, oh, who's here? It was exciting, but now it's like,
who the fuck is knocking on my door?
Yeah,
I have to put pants on.
Yeah, and even with our phones now, we can see who's calling, so we can decide what to do with that information. So, I think getting to know your neighbors. If you can be sharing resources, if they've got a compost bin or some animals or some dogs, and you go, hey, I've got a bit of leftover meat or a bit of leftover blah blah. I mean, I know your dog loves weird shit like bananas and avocado.
Her favourite foods are banana and avocado.
Yeah, so don't get on that vegan cat trail. Or maybe I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, definitely finding creative ways to get rid of your scraps is important. Like we said, like the reason we're doing this is to keep that food waste out of landfill, because that is just so much more harmful for the environment. Methane gas is such a bad greenhouse gas, and we're contributing so much to that with our food waste. So using all these points, getting creative, doing that extra little bit really helps.
On to the next point, share. So if you find that you're getting to the end of the week and you've got this leftover food that you don't really want to eat all of it yourself, invite your friends over for dinner and cook for them. And that goes towards building a community, which I think a lot of us are lacking at the moment, and it's hurting our souls. Alternatively, you could give food to a homeless shelter. I haven't looked into the mechanics of this, but I do know that when we did a bake sale for the bushfires recently, we had some baked goods that didn't sell left over, and the local homeless shelter accepted that food. So that's great. There are also lots of apps you can use where people can say, hey, I'm not going to eat this, pick up in whatever location, and you can go and get that food for free.
Cool.
Yeah. And then there are organizations like Oz Harvest, which are taking unwanted or unused foods and giving it to the homeless.
Yeah, I really like all these options. I think they're really great.
Oh, good.
Sorry. I know there's a lot of laws and stuff in different countries that like prevent businesses donating food and things like that, which can be frustrating.
Yeah, I think Australia is one of the more fastidious countries in terms of occupational health and safety regarding food. And maybe we need to move away from that, because maybe the greenhouse gases associated with food waste are more detrimental to the minor risk of being made sick from food that's only a day old.
Yeah, and I think some of this stuff is, I don't know where it's come from, but yeah, even when we were in Bulgaria, they had the same issue. They had like so much leftover food from businesses that they just had to get rid of. And it's just a real shame, and that's like a part of this big social problem with this stuff. But of course, like we can only do what we can control. So that's why these tips are really good for that. But then being aware, like there is a bigger issue that we do have to try and combat as well.
Okay, so we know that businesses want to avoid being made liable for giving food that could make people sick. And obviously we don't want to make people sick, but I think maybe the rules are too tough. But do you also think that there is shame in seeking out and accepting unwanted food in society?
Yeah, I think there is. And I don't know where it's come from, but even I was at a bar the other week catching up with a friend, and they have like these amazing pizzas, and there was a group of people that ordered too many pizzas, so they had probably like half a pizza left. And I was just thinking, like, why can't, like, we're about to order you know, some pizzas, why can't we just go and eat that? Like there's that weird barrier between that, and that is definitely frowned upon. Like if I started doing that, I don't know if it,
like, hey, I need to eat, I see that you have this food that is just going to go to the bin, how about we share it or something? I don't know. So like you didn't do that?
No, but
I would be uncomfortable doing that, and yet I don't have much shame around accepting food from other people. Like if I go to dinner and people don't finish their meals, I'm like, you gonna eat that?
But we also experienced this when we were in Cyprus working at the restaurant. There was so much leftover food, and usually, you know, like they did have dogs and chickens and all that sort of stuff, but there was definitely things that we would just take away from people's meals that had
their tables that they didn't eat. Yeah,
that they'd eaten or half eaten or touched or whatever, and we would just put that all in a pot, and that's what we would use for our meals.
Yeah, so. Like we had to say to our workaway hosts, because we were volunteering at an eco restaurant, like, no, it doesn't need to go to the rubbish. Like, we will eat this. We don't care if it's been served to someone. Like, this is a perfectly good hummus or whatever. Yeah,
there was so much food waste generated from that one small little restaurant. So I couldn't imagine the amount of food waste at other businesses.
Yeah.
But we're digressing. We're getting away from our topic here. But
not really.
Let us know if you would eat someone else's pizza from a restaurant that they left.
Maybe that's a challenge for the group.
Oh yeah,
Step outside your comfort zone.
Next month's bingo board is eat someone else's leftover food at a restaurant.
Yeah. Okay, so let's address some of the comments. Lorna says, we rinse our fruits in the sink with water and vinegar and it helps keep them longer. Yes, I really like that. And it also goes towards rinsing away some of those herbicides and pesticides that could be contaminating our food.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy says, everyone needs to visit a farm and learning where your veggies and meat come from to know from seed to plate. Yes, I agree. Like growing up in the city, you have very few opportunities to go to a farm, but I think it's really important to learn that like very integral part of our world.
Yeah, I think especially getting back to that Ideas Evolution podcast we did with Mel and Rachel. And about sustainable families and the importance of having that conversation with children to let them know there is a disconnect between their food and where it actually comes from, especially with meat and things like that as well. I think it's important to...
Yeah, like if you're eating a chop on your plate, that was a living animal at one stage.
Yeah, so we're not trying to put fear into people, but just make them understand that, you know, this is coming from this place and this is what it takes to grow this piece of meat. So really value that and be grateful that you do have such easy access to that, and just be more mindful of if you do waste it or if you're not going to eat it for whatever reason, that it should be a very good reason.
Yeah, and this is something that I learned from travel as well. Like, we do have great access to healthy and an abundance of food in Australia. You don't have that in lots of places in the world. Like, you can't just go down to the shop and be like, I feel like pasta for dinner, and just like pasta be on the shelf.
Pasta be there. Cool. And then Kelly says, I'm guessing she threw a corn out this week because it dried out. There's no room in her fridge. She feels gutted. Yeah, I feel you on that one. I love corn, and yeah, it does dry out really quickly. So you do need to get on that corn. Jumping on to our conclusion. There is so much about environmentalism that we can't control. So like getting back to all this food waste from different restaurants and these social issues, and
just anything to do with environmentalism, like having a fucked government that doesn't even recognize that climate change is real. That sucks. Like that's in some way out of our control, and you might feel helpless about that. And there's so much in industry and in consumer culture where you can't impact someone else's actions that are then impacting you as a living organism. That sucks. But we can control how much food we waste as an individual or as a household, and we can reduce that by taking some practical steps like planning your meals, learning the best way, that you shop, storing your food properly, eating your leftovers, shopping from your fridge, meal prepping if that's something that works for you, composting, using your scraps, and sharing your unneeded food.
Yeah, and then all this comes back to being organised, being disciplined, being creative, and being generous as well. So I think being organised is a big one when it comes to anything sustainable or intentional. Just doing that little bit of extra effort, understanding, taking a step back from your life and looking at the situation and what you can do better. I think we're in this rush. Things need to be done now. I need to get on to the next thing. I need to be achieving, where it's like, let's just take a step back, become responsible for your own stuff first. And then if you've got that under control, then of course help others, help people around you understand this stuff. And then that just creates a bigger impact. But getting yourself right and your own stuff that you can control is so important.
But also don't expect to be perfect before you then go share the importance of living sustainably with other people. Like, we've never had to change our habits so drastically as a society before. We all have to undergo huge lifestyle shifts. So this is it's a pretty unprecedented time. So don't expect to be perfect. Don't expect other people to be perfect. Don't disparage other people for making different progress to you. But I do think definitely share the problems that you're seeing, share the solutions, just talk about it.
Yep. And you got to walk that talk too. Like, I think leading by example is so important, as well as talking about it. Like, I know a lot of people are so adverse to having information and being shamed around these topics. So that may not be the best approach for everyone, but if you're doing things and showing people that, this stuff is not that hard, and then they asking questions, then you can jump in on that education process. But yeah, I think we're all wrapped up with our points. And yeah, any questions you guys have, if you want a show of hands for Hayley's story about the homeless man and the chicken wing.
No, thank you.
Then please let us know, and then we'll put that to a vote and we'll make her tell us all about it.
So just to let you know, we do these live chats in our Facebook group, which is called Sustainable and Intentional Lifestyle. So come join the group if you are not listening to this chat in the group currently. We then take the video from this live chat and put it on YouTube. So if that's your jam, you can watch it there. And then we also take the audio from this chat and put it on our podcast. So just search for Ecolust Podcast on any podcast app, and you can get us in your ears at your convenience, maybe while you are cooking food that you're not going to waste.
Yeah, and we really appreciate everyone who's jumped on here today, jumped in with us live, all the feedback we're getting, all the questions, we really appreciate them. It's awesome that we're getting this two-way dialogue.
Yeah, your input is the best. Like that's why we do this, so that we can all have these discussions, we can all learn, and we can all progress towards living more sustainably.